And look at that. We are live. I just don't even have headphones on. My mic wasn't on. You would think that there was an event going on at some point, and I would probably be ready for it. Well, that's what the pre-show's for. This is our pre-show of today's N10-009 Network Plus study group. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. I see you over there. Even though I'm sort of untangling my mess of wires that I use to listen in on myself, I don't even hear myself right now. Well, that's not technically true. Of course I hear myself, but not through the audio chain of my mixer, which is the important part for me since I am doing the stream. Let's plug it in and have a look. Plug. Boom, there we go. Now, the real question is, do I hear myself? Do I? Yes, I do. Sounds pretty good. All right. I always like to have a little sanity check there in my ear, knowing that I am doing something. Okay. So that worked well. Oh, you know what we're not doing? We're not recording. Because who needs to record after all? It's just a live event that I need a replay for. There we go. Oh, I haven't done a podcast update either. You all get to enjoy while I say the script to myself and get this going. Our checklist looks fine. Okay. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Network Plus N10-009 study group. This study group was recorded on November 21st, 2025. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Network Plus N10-009 study group Aftershow. This Aftershow was recorded on November 21st, 2025. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. And just like that, that part's done. Let's bring up our checklist here. Everything looks good there. Let's bring up the details of the chat room. Hello, chat room. What recording programs I use? Well, we got very simply, I don't really have a recording program problem. YouTube is doing the thing with the names again. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the things with the names means. What is the things with the names mean? I don't know. Are they now calling me something different? I am now a different name. Hello, San Gabriel Valley, California. Folks are checking in from all over already. Oh, and if you haven't seen I guess I should bring up, there's the big list so you can actually see where people are connecting. There you go. It's showing the @ and the base account name instead of the nicknames. Well, you know, you got me. I don't know. I could not tell you what the methodology is of what they show for account names and all that. And things tend to change on YouTube. They'll update something and something will change on the screen. A couple weeks ago, they updated the live stream configuration. And so all the buttons were in a different place. I had to find everything again. I think it's sort of a game we all play from a technology perspective. Let's put a new version out and let's see how it goes. And sometimes it goes great, and sometimes I'm left in a confusing state. I should say most of the time I'm left in a confusing state. A state of confusion. Sort of where we are. Today is all Network Plus. We are recording down here. You can see my Cylons. If you would like to connect and put your virtual pin in our digital pin cushion, you can absolutely do that by going to professormesser.com/QA. I have to see. Oh, what to do if facing too many failures and curiosity dies? Wow. There's an uplifting thought for the weekend. There's no such thing as too many failures. Failures is an opportunity to learn. Failures is an opportunity to find out how to fix something. In fact, you never really know when things are bad or how you would fix, how you would troubleshoot, how you would resolve problems until something breaks. So in many ways, you're waiting for something to break. If you're in IT, you're pretty much a problem solver anyway. You like puzzles. You like looking at a problem and finding the solution to the problem. So that's something, I think most of us like doing that, though. It's not just an IT thing, right? That's pretty much all of us. We got less than 4 minutes to go, about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Am I ready? I don't know. I'm not sure. We're going to find out, but I think we are. I think we're in pretty good shape. I've got things set up here We've got connections over here. Phone can go over there. Let's get a drink. Oh, perfect. Perfection. We got folks checking in from all over. That's a pretty big pin cushion we have there because folks are checking in from India. Folks are checking in from Australia, South Africa, a bunch of folks in North America, even my good Canadian friends up there. It's like somebody's sort of in the, what is that? It's more of a Toronto, or is it the other side? We're way up there. No, it's way up above the Great Lakes. So it's way up there in no man's land. There's some folks in PEI. It's like there's a lot going on up there. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. And from wherever you are in the world, we really do appreciate you being here. We got lots going on. So I've been so busy today. This has sort of caught up to me. I was doing other things. It was one of those scenarios where you are zoned in, you are in the middle of doing something, and then you look up and realize, oh, I've got something very soon. It's one of those, you've got 3 minutes, and it's just a gasp. And I don't know. We'll have to, I had more than 3 minutes, but not much more. So I had to go get things done. I had to go prepare the lighting, set up where everything is going. Most everything, though, sets up pretty quick in here. I've got a checklist so I don't miss anything, and then I go through and set everything up. And it's working pretty seamlessly now. I mentioned last live stream that we had reset everything in the studio just over a year ago now. We set it up so that it would all run from the desk. So everything that runs this live stream is effectively what you're looking at, although there's things on the right and left side that are 19-inch racks. You can't really see them. If I move out of the way, you can kind of see there's equipment down here. There's a switch. There's a, I don't think I have anything plugged in. I've got a headphone amp right here. I don't know if I'm still using that or not. I need to look at my audio chain. I thought I removed it. I thought the audio amp that I have in my new mixer, which you see here with all the pretty lights, that has pretty much replaced it, which is great. And then we've got my video switcher is the red and green and white light thing with the funny little LCD connected to it. And then I have a UPS down at the bottom. Down on this side is the recorders, which are kind of hard to see with the lower third there. So you can kind of see the things circling around there that I colloquially call my Cylons. They are recording the video. So somebody was asking in the chat room earlier about what I use to record with. That's what I use to record. It is hardware. Let's see how dusty it is. Very dusty. It's not that bad. So those are the recording systems that are recording to SSD. And so they just record different outputs from the video switcher console. You can see right there. It's taking different outputs of those and just storing them right there. So that's what we're using. So I don't really use programs to record the stream. It's all purpose-built hardware. Oh, look, it's top of the hour. See what I mean? You get in a zone, you start working through the zone, and then you realize, oh, wait, we're doing a live stream today. Let's now get our keynote going. What was I thinking? And let's click. Oh, I love when it can't find. Oh, there we go. Green light. I was wondering there. It was thinking. There we go. Okay. How about a live stream, everybody? How about we do a study group? Let's do it right now. I don't know that I saw my update message come through for my live stream, but that's okay. We are here now. We're going to make it happen. Let's go ahead with the live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2025 Professor Messer N10-009. This is our Network Plus study group. This is the study group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see how well you might know some of that content. I have all brand new questions for you today, so you are in perfect place to be able to learn all about the things you need to know. Well, many of the things you need to know about the Network Plus exam. Not only are we going to present to you questions during this first hour, I will also be taking your questions in the second hour. So if you have a question that you would like to present, you can always do that by going to the link that you will hear many times today, professormesser.com/QA. Now, if you are someone who is working along with answering these questions, you're here live, you're working through the details of it, there's the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Simply pop open a new browser window and you will be able to answer questions along with the rest of us in real time. If you're not here live, that's okay. You can still follow along with us, even though that link is not available. It won't be working for you if you're not here for the live stream. You can certainly follow along, lock in your answers, at least in your brain, and then you can see how well you do on the other side of it. To see how well we do, to start things off, to see just how good we remember things, this is a question from last month. So that's important consideration, by the way, is that we don't commonly tell you questions that are repeating themselves, except for our first question of the day, which is what we call our rewind question. The main rules for our rewind questions, or main rules for our questions in general, is that I'm going to give you this question. I'm going to give you some potential answers. And if you know the answer, you want to use the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question. Please do not put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. This question asks, an analysis of a network drop shows a high reading of next. Which of the following would be the best way to address this measurement? Is it replace multi-mode with single mode, recrimp the connectors, verify continuity for all wires, use a crossover cable, or clean the connectors? One of those will be the right answer. So if you would like to answer this question, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer, and we will come back to this question in just a moment. Do not worry. We will get this question answered and figure out what it is once and for all. Thank you so much for joining us today on this live stream. We do one of these Network Plus study groups every month. You can always check our calendar to know when the next live event is going to be. And of course, when we're not here on our live streams, you can find us on social media. Simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us. So professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/LinkedIn, professormesser.com/Instagram. Lots of things we can do there. So have a look at where you might be on the social media platforms and see if we're there as well. And if we're not there, let me know. Maybe I need to get an account going on the new thing that they're creating somewhere. There will be another thing eventually. Of course there will. These things tend to be very cyclical. So feel free to check in on that. I will remind you, of course, today that this live stream is all about the Network Plus exam, the N10-009 version of the Network Plus exam. That's the version of the Network Plus exam that was released on June the 20th of 2024. So it's really not even that old. This exam is expected to retire around the fourth quarter of 2027. So if you are here near the end in November of 2025, you've got plenty of time to study and take this version of the exam. The exam itself is a single exam. They give you 90 minutes to complete the exam. You could get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam, or you might get fewer than 90. Usually you get a little bit fewer than 90. It doesn't always have to be 90 questions. They score this on an interesting scale. The scale is 100 to 900. So it's not 0 to 1,000. It's not 0 to 100. It's 100 to 900. Yes, I know. But I don't design the exams either or grade them, as it turns out. The score we're hoping to get is a 720. So if you are working on this exam, that's the number you're hoping to see when you hit the submit question at the end of your exam. If you get a 900, that's great. If you get a 720, that's great, but the result is exactly the same. It's a pass-fail. As long as you get 720 points or more, you're in good shape. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. We've already seen multiple choice, so we will also see performance-based questions here today as well. We'll have to see what's there. Now, of course, we have our entire course available for you to watch on our YouTube channel. There's no registration required. There's nothing additional that's hidden behind the scenes. There's nothing behind a paywall. You simply need to go to our YouTube channel or our website to be able to see it. Sometimes people would like additional features and study materials. If you would like practice exams, if you would like course notes, if you would like downloadable versions of our course, all of these things are available on our website. You can find a lot more of this available. Simply go to professormesser.com/netsuccess or go to professormesser.com and then find the links in our main menu that will take you to the resources that you might need. This might be another way to also supplement the videos that you are already watching on our YouTube channel. Again, that's at professormesser.com/netsuccess. This video will be available for replay immediately afterwards on our YouTube channel. We also create an audio-only version that we distribute in a podcast form. So that part is very useful if you have a podcast listening application that you like to use, or perhaps you have a streaming audio service that you use. Maybe you're on Spotify. You can simply search for Professor Messer there and find the same podcast distributions. If you would like to add this to your own podcast listening program, simply go over to professormesser.com/podcast, and you'll find our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus study groups listed there, and you can easily add those using the RSS feeds. Eventually, probably about a day after you watch this, you'll notice that our YouTube video description is full of timestamps. Those are added by our marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this in the replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through the process of working through watching this on the replay at 2x speed and writing down everything that we're doing. This really helps when you need to go back in time to be able to find things very, very quickly. Look at a question, look at an answer, look at a question somebody submitted during the after show. They're all in there. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. And if you like to use that in the chat room, if that's something that's useful to you, feel free to give you a thumbs up. You will be in very good shape being able to work through the details of this. This is something that can also help you find things very, very quickly. And when you're studying for your exam, you do sometimes need that type of speed. There's also a Discord that we have set up specifically for our Professor Messer community. You can find that at professormesser.com/discord or follow the links at the top of the Professor Messer website. We have thousands of people registered there who are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. We also have a lot of smart people there that are already certified. So if you have a question about the exam, the process, the topics, the objectives, or anything else associated with these certifications, you might want to head over there and join us at professormesser.com/discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, of course, and you could go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take your exam. But if you're in the US or Canada, why would you do that when I have discounted vouchers on my site? These are exactly the same vouchers you would purchase on the CompTIA website, but they are available to you at a discount. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to install anything in a browser. You simply need to visit the URL on your screen, professormesser.com/vouchers, and immediately you've got a discount built into the price. I show you all of the discounts on the screen, and you even have the choice to decide whether you want a one-use voucher or whether you would like a voucher that might have an additional add-on for a retake. It's kind of an insurance policy that if you don't pass the first time, you've got another chance at it. And there's only, I think it's only about $49 for that additional retake option. Might be something worth doing. So you can find all of these options and decide exactly the type of voucher you want at professormesser.com/vouchers. Also, I'll remind you that if you do that, you also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook that I wrote that has a number of tips and tricks that can help you during the study process and some strategies you can use during the exam itself to be able to score a few extra points. And that's something that might make the difference when you're finally hitting that submit button on your exam. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go through that question I asked earlier, which was, an analysis of a network drop shows a high reading of next. Next what? Which of the following would be the best way to address this measurement? Would this be to replace multi-mode with single mode? Would it be to recrimp the connectors? Would it be to verify continuity for all wires? Would it be to use a crossover cable, or would it be to clean the connectors? Well, if you are someone who is working on your Network Plus exam, or perhaps you were here last month, you might remember this question. So what did you answer last month? And then maybe different answer this month. Let's find out what everyone chose. We're going to close this poll and see that 46% of you say recrimp the connectors. 28% of you said verify continuity for all of the wires. You've got 19% that say replace multi-mode with single mode. And then we've got single digits. 5% said to use a crossover cable and 2% said to clean the connectors. Well, I guess it would be good to start with what next happens to be. Next is a near-end crosstalk. That means that we are measuring how much of our electrical signal is leaking out from one wire and is being heard by other wires in that same bundle. This can create, obviously, interference for the traffic going back and forth. And if you measure that interference closest to where you happen to be, you're plugging into a connector and you want to know, what is this near-end crosstalk that I am receiving? You can, of course, see that. Of course, if you were measuring this at the other end, it would be far-end crosstalk. So you got two perspectives. How much crosstalk is occurring right now where the signal is the strongest? And then once you get all the way to the end of the wire, how much crosstalk is really affecting the final signal, which in many ways, both of those values are in many ways very important. So something to consider. There might also be crosstalk or interference coming from other wires or other devices or other components. We refer to that often as alien crosstalk. It's the alien. It's not, there's no aliens involved. Just in case you were worried, just in case there was a concern, no actual aliens were involved with this process. And there's also attenuation to crosstalk ratio, so you can understand the difference between the crosstalk and just losing signal over those links. So a number of different crosstalk metrics that you have to think about. But the question was, how do you address these problems? How do you address a crosstalk issue? Crosstalk is relating to traffic that is being heard on other wires. You're getting an interference that's coming from the signals that are being sent out of another connection. This also, because it is crosstalk, we're talking about a copper connection. Obviously, light does not somehow interfere or leak out onto other fibers. So this would be something very specific to working with copper connections, having those connections there. So anything dealing with correcting a existing crimp, reducing any type of ability to get into a connection, maybe a shielded connection would help with crosstalk, maybe using a higher category of cable that has a larger diameter and an additional distance between those pairs. The laws of physics dictate that would also help us with crosstalk. And then we can use an analysis tool to really determine how much signal is being interfered with, how much are we losing across this particular connection. All of those can help you when you are troubleshooting a crosstalk problem. So with all of those, which one of our answers here matches those recommendations? Well, if we happen to see the correct answer, we know that it is recrimp the connectors. 46% of you said, yeah, we recrimp those connectors. That should help with our near-end crosstalk if we're having a problem with that. Verifying continuity for all wires. If we did not have continuity, then we would not have crosstalk because there would be no way for that signal to go down the wire. So anytime where you do not have this, or you don't have any type of connection, you don't have to worry about any crosstalk. That certainly is, that's a good and a bad thing at the same time. So you certainly want to have continuity across your wires. So that would probably not be the answer we were looking for. 19% said to replace multi-mode with single mode, but that would be referring to fiber optics, and we're having a next issue, near-end crosstalk. And as I already mentioned, near-end crosstalk is something you would find on a copper connection, not a fiber, so that would not provide any help. In fact, you'll go looking to replace your multi-mode, and you realize there's no multi-mode fiber here. That's because we're having a near-end crosstalk problem. Using a crossover cables have nothing to do with crosstalk, although the cross is in the name, there is really no relationship there. And cleaning the connectors, in this case, you really don't have to clean copper connectors. You would commonly clean fiber connectors. And as we've already mentioned, this is not a fiber issue. This is a copper issue, which means that our answer here is 46% of you saying to recrimp the connectors. And I think we did much better this month on this particular problem than we did last. You must have remembered a bit of what we covered last month. Well done. So that is our initial rewind question of the month. Now that you're able to get in and answer the question and go to the links, we know that everything is working as we would expect. So let's do some new questions, shall we? These new questions, the first new question that we do every month is a question that is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions in the definition of CompTIA is anything that is not multiple choice. As we mentioned before, maybe you had no idea what next happened to be. Maybe you had no idea what multi-mode and single mode is or any of these other options on here, and you just took a guess. Because it's multiple choice, you could have chosen any of these, and because I had 5 answers here, you had a 20% chance of getting it right, even if you had no idea what I was talking about. Even if you didn't speak my language, you had a 20% chance of getting it right. Well, CompTIA wants to test you a little bit better than that. They don't want to give you any gimmies. So one of the things that they will do is they will start the exam with a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. And if it is not a multiple choice question, CompTIA defines that as a performance-based question. So I have for you a performance-based question. These performance-based questions can be a option at a command line to ask you to perform a function. Maybe they are asking you to interpret the output from a tool or utility that you're using. Maybe it's a fill in the blank question. Maybe it's a drag and drop question. Maybe it is one where you have to put things in a particular order. It's any type of question that could be asked. And a lot of people, I think, are very concerned about wanting to know the format of the question. Well, the reality is the format could be anything. So you really don't know how they are going to ask the question. But as I have often said in these study groups, as long as you know the exam objectives, as long as you know the content that will be asked of you on the exam, really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer because you already understand the topics that are being discussed. So I have for you today a performance-based question. This one is a matching question. And I want to say this one is a relatively easy matching question because it's a one-to-one match, which is something you will never see from me. This is an early holiday present to all of you to make this a little bit easier. So here is our performance-based question of the month. The question asks, choose the best command for the task. And I have for you 7 commands, and I have for you 7 tasks. It is a one-to-one connection. So this might be a little bit easier than some of these that we've done in the past. We'll find out in a moment. Let's step through each of these commands and talk about each of these tasks, especially for those of you that are listening in on the podcast side. The commands are, number 1 is show MAC address table. The second is show route, show interface, show config, show ARP, show VLAN, and show power. So you've got a few options there for commands. These are commands, by the way, that are very generic commands. These are commands that you would find on a Cisco switch, a Palo Alto Networks firewall, a third-party firewall, an open source device. These commands are very common. So that's why they're listed in the exam objectives, because the show power command on one device may be exactly the same show power command on another device, although the results in the screen that we see coming through may be different. So I have for you 7 different scenarios, and I want you to match the command to them. They are: view the current switch settings. Which command would you use for that? View the hardware address of devices communicating through the switch. Display a list of MAC addresses and IP address associations. Identify the broadcast domain used by each switch interface. View the wattage used by a VoIP phone. Confirm a trunk interface is configured for full duplex. And determine the IP address of the next hop. These are all things that are important for you to know, especially if you're troubleshooting a network, which is why CompTIA wants you to know what commands you would use to be able to do this. And although many people often say, well, it's a common command, you would use it on the switch, it's actually a common command you use across multiple switches or multiple devices from multiple manufacturers. And even if it's not exactly this syntax, it's very often very close to it. So once you get into a mode of knowing what to look for figuring out the command is relatively easy. I think a lot of us worry that we're not going to know the command, when in reality, what we really should be doing is looking at the tasks and determining what do we need to do to be able to see that. So hopefully you're able to match these up. If you think they are already matched up, you can say 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5D, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can go through the whole list. I don't think I did that quite right, but you know what I'm talking about. You just put them in as that. You don't have to spell everything out when you're putting this in on the side, on the configuration side, on the answer page, which you can, of course, find at professormesser.com/QA. Have to be where we're working through on those. I think there's a lot to know with these commands. It's very useful if you not only know what to type in, but you understand why you're typing it in. Sometimes that's the hardest part, isn't it? Sometimes that's the most challenging part of this, is being able to make that happen. We'll have to find out when that is, and we're looking through it. There's a lot to go through on all of these tasks. I think I covered all of the tasks in the exam objectives, though. I think I put all of them in here. I think there were 7. We'll have to look later and see if that's really the case. I tried to fit every single one of these in here. And that's one of the reasons I also wanted to put 7 different answers in here, so we really would have a one-to-one. It would give us a real chance to understand what these tools happen to do. If you think you know the answer, lock those in. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Somebody in the chat room was asking about the Discord link. You can find that always at professormesser.com/Discord. It's another one too. And I don't think I put the December dates on the calendar yet, have I? Maybe I did. We'll have to see. I will talk about what our December dates are for live streams in a moment. We still aren't done with November yet. We have a November live stream next week. We'll be talking about Security Plus. That's the only one left in the month. We did 3 live streams this week. This is our 3rd live stream of the week. It's really remarkable. I'm still talking. Quite honestly, I don't think we've done 3 live streams in a single week in a very, very, very long time, in years. So it's been a lot of fun kind of squeezing them in this week and making it happen. And I think we might have just managed to do it. Very happy about that. Let's see how you did with this one. A number of you are getting your answers in now. So let's step through these one at a time and see what we think the answer happens to be. I'm going to quickly move over to another screen because I don't think I set up the view that I wanted to show on the answer page. I think it just sort of threw everything up all at one time. So I want to set up a little, this is me in real time editing the entire thing that I am doing here. That's why it's a live stream, people. We just deal with this as we step through it. So let's see if I did it right. So let's go through each one of these one at a time, and we'll start with show MAC address table. So this is the command, the first command, and of the 7 things that I have listed there, what task is most associated or is best set for choosing that one? The show MAC address table would be answer B, which you can sort of see there, which is to view the hardware address of devices communicating through the switch. Obviously, this is how switches decide to forward traffic, is they have a big list of MAC addresses, and they have a big list of where those MAC addresses happen to be connected on the switch. That way, if they see something coming inbound for a MAC address, they can simply direct it to the right device on the switch. That one goes to port 1. That one goes to port 4. That one goes to port 7. That one goes to port 10. The way that it makes that determination is it knows what MAC addresses are communicating into those ports so that it's able to send the traffic back out to those when they go that way. So there needs to be a table somewhere in the switch that is keeping track of all of this. It's just somebody sitting there with a dashboard, a whiteboard or something. They're writing down on their sheet of paper, here's a MAC address. Oh, where are you coming from? Port 2. And it waits for the next bit of traffic to come in. Oh, here's some new traffic. There's a MAC address that's inbound. That's on port 7. And it just keeps a note of these. And after a certain amount of time, usually a few minutes, it times them out of the list, and we would have to receive traffic again on that interface to be able to put them back into that list. And to be able to view this table, you can view it in your switch by using the show MAC address table command. Next on our list is show route. Show route best fits G, determine the IP address of the next hop. That is exactly what we would use show route to be able to do. The show route command shows you the routing table for that device. There's often show route commands on workstations. So if you're in Windows, there is it's not show route, but a similar route command in Windows that can show that. In Windows, it's route print. We also have the similar configurations in Linux and Mac OS. Different operating systems have different commands to be able to show you this. IP route is a good example of that. And so being able to view that next hop so that when you're troubleshooting the network, where do we go when we're communicating outside of this network? There's our next hop. We would see that by using the show route command. Next on our list is show interface. What type of information is shown when we type in show interface? One of them is to confirm the trunk interface configured for full duplex. Show interface is showing you interface level configurations, the physical configuration of that interface. What duplex is set on the interface? What speed is set on that interface? Is it set to 10? Is it set to 100? Is it set to gig? Is it set to 2.5 gig? Is it set to 10 gig? Or is it set to automatic? So you can see all of those things by typing in show interface. I'll also mention for each one of these commands, I'm not really showing you the output on this screen, but of course in my video, this is my N10-009 video in section 5.5, and the video name is called Basic Network Device Commands. I show you all of these commands along with the output for all of these commands. So you can, of course, go in and look and be more familiar. Even if you don't have these commands or these devices at your disposal, you can see what I got on my devices when I typed in these commands. So it might be helpful if you're going through this list and you're wondering, wait, I don't understand what the difference between a show route and a show interface is. The video should clear all of that up for you. Next on our list is show config. What would provide us with show config? Viewing the current switch settings. This would be the configuration of the switch. When you get a switch, it obviously does not have any IP addresses configured in it for management. It doesn't have any of the interface VLANs set up. It doesn't have names associated with the interfaces. It doesn't have physical interface configuration set up. You have to configure all of those different interfaces and the parameters of the switch itself. So being able to look at the configuration of the switch is very useful, especially when you first connect to the switch and you're troubleshooting the switch. You may have questions like, how many interfaces are on this switch? What are those interfaces configured for? Are there any trunk interfaces? Do we have any type of port security configured? Do we have spanning tree turned on? So all these questions that you might have, well, looking at the configuration of the switch will tell you all of this. So it's a great command to know. That may be the best command to know is show config. That can really help you quite a bit. Next on our list is show ARP. ARP. That is answer C. This allows you to display a list of MAC addresses and IP addresses and their associations. That's what address resolution protocol is designed to do for you. As many of us know, when you're communicating over our Ethernet and similar network types, we are communicating devices directly through their MAC address, their media access control address, their burned in hardware address. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as the burned in address, the BIA. The burned in address is one that identifies the hardware of that machine. But we don't usually communicate devices using their hardware address. We as humans usually communicate using IP addresses. So we need some way to identify the MAC address if we happen to know the IP address, and sometimes vice versa. And we do that by using the show ARP command so we can see all of the ARP definitions, all of the resolutions that have already been done that currently exist in our ARP cache. Similar to the MAC address table, that ARP cache also times out after a number of minutes. And so it would also have to re-ARP if it wants to find the next update, the next correlation between MAC addresses and IP addresses. So if it falls out of the table, we got to relearn it again. It sends another ARP, we relearn it, it sticks in the chart for another 2 minutes, then it falls out again and we have to go through the whole process all over again, which seems like it would be very inefficient. But in reality, that provides us with a lot of flexibility because if that IP address moves to a different MAC address, we want to be sure that we follow it wherever it happens to go. Next on our list is show VLAN. We want to show, this one may be relatively straightforward. If anything is related to a virtual local area network, for example, you want to identify the broadcast domain used by each switch interface, showing the VLANs will show you that. Now, this is one that takes you an extra step in your mind. You have to immediately think, what is a VLAN? A VLAN is a definition of a broadcast domain that is done on a switch, more of a virtual way. So knowing the broadcast domain part is a very important piece of this. A VLAN is a broadcast domain. A single broadcast domain you can think of as a VLAN, at least in the world of a switched network. So that's a very good way. You may in fact have a switch that only has one VLAN in the whole switch. That makes it very easy. But if you were to look at my switch that I have here in the studio, I have a storage VLAN. I have a VLAN for a separate test network. I have a VLAN for my production network. So I need to look through my switch configuration and see what interfaces are connecting to which VLANs. So when I plug in a new device, I'm plugging it into the right broadcast domain. And so show VLAN command allows me to do that. And lastly, show power. Power. This one might be relatively straightforward. It is the only one left on our list, so it should be relatively obvious that it is answer E. View the wattage used by a VoIP phone. This is something that has become very, very important in our modern networks because we are sending our power through the Ethernet cables. So we can plug in devices into our switches and power those devices by simply just connecting our Ethernet connection. We no longer have to plug into a power cord. We no longer have to find the right power connection. We no longer have to find an outlet. I do this all the time because in my home, I have different switches that I put in different parts of the house. I just run a single Ethernet cable to that room, and I plug in a power over Ethernet switch, which powers itself without having to plug it into any power source. Super convenient when you're trying to plug in that Xbox, behind the cabinet, and you don't really have any more power connections available to you. Not really a problem you often find in a corporate environment, although maybe you do. Maybe for working at Microsoft, you have to always find the power for your switch connection for your Xbox. That may be super important to you. But it also applies to other components like voice over IP phones, like cameras, and these days, even computing devices. You can plug in laptops and other devices to make that happen. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of where these particular commands might come in handy. It might be very useful to understand in what scenarios would you need to use these particular commands. And indeed, you can make that happen by going to all of the configuration options on your switch, on your router, on your firewall, and looking through some of these very common commands. It's nice that CompTIA really focused on the display of information. We're not configuring the switch. We're not configuring the settings on the router. We're not making changes to the configuration of the firewall. We're simply showing the configuration of that device. And very often, as we mention all the time, when you're troubleshooting, your first step should be all about gathering information. And the show commands can provide you with an extensive amount of information that can be extremely useful. Make sure you are aware. So for those of you that went through our performance-based question of the day, show MAC address table views the hardware address of devices communicating through the switch. Show route determines the IP address of the next hop. Show interface confirms the trunk interface is configured for full duplex. Show config views the current switch settings. Show ARP displays a list of MAC addresses and IP address associations. Show VLAN identifies the broadcast domain used by each switch interface, and show power views the wattage used by a VoIP phone. These are just some of the examples we might be able to use. So this could be extremely useful to you if you're troubleshooting on a device that you've never connected to. Maybe you don't even know the syntax of that device, but it's a pretty good bet that if you're using a show command, you're simply viewing information. It's very hard to break anything by simply using a show command. Hopefully you're familiar with those. If not, make sure you check out that video in section 5.5. The video name is Basic Network Device Commands. Let's now shift gears back to our multiple choice questions. Our next multiple choice question is this one that asks, an IPv6 network does not have a DHCP server, but each device is automatically configured with a unique IPv6 address, subnet mask, and default gateway. Which of the following is providing this functionality? Is it DNSSEC, VLSM, CNAME, Slack, or CIDR? It's just a bunch of letters jumbled together, isn't it? The question again asks, an IPv6 network does not have a DHCP server, but each device is automatically configured with a unique IPv6 address, subnet mask, and default gateway? Which of the following is providing this functionality? Do you think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Your possible answers are DNSSEC, VLSM, CNAME, Slack, or CIDR. Lock those answers in at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA. A lot of people getting their answers in very quickly on this one. I always like to watch the numbers count up on the upper right-hand side as you're locking in your answers, plugging those in. Sometimes we plug them in very quickly and we're all absolutely correct. Sometimes we plug them in very quickly and we're completely wrong. So I've learned not to trust my instincts on this one. You just never know until we finally get them locked in. And of course, you can lock them in at professormesser.com/QA. You just have to stay right there and lock those in. The question again asks, an IPv6 network does not have a DHCP server, but each device is automatically configured with a unique IPv6 address, subnet mask, and default gateway. Which of the following is providing this functionality? Is it DNSSEC, VLSM, CNAME, Slack, or CIDR? Let's close the poll and see what you think the answer is. 56% of you, just over the majority, say the answer is Slack, SLAAC. But we have a good number of double digits here. 14% say CIDR, 13% said DNSSEC, 11% said VLSM, and then 7% say CNAME. So we had a pretty good distribution all the way around with this particular answer. But if you're working with IPv6, then there's probably one single answer here that makes perfect sense, and that would be Slack. 56% of you chose that answer, and that is indeed the correct answer. Slack is our stateless address auto configuration, which we, of course, have to create into a series of abbreviations. That's an important part in this industry. So this is a way that we can connect an IPv6 device to the network. We can plug it in, and it magically gets a unique IP address that can communicate publicly across the internet. That's something we didn't have in IPv4. IPv4 required that you had a DHCP server or required for you to manually type in those IP configurations. And if you didn't do that, it could give you an IP address, but it was a private IP address on your internal network that could not be routed. So this is a little bit different. When we created IPv6, we decided let's now make IPv6 be functional without having to set up additional DHCP servers to make that happen. So that works very, very well in that scenario. It looks across the network using a neighbor discovery protocol, which you can't see there because my head's in the way. But that is one that looks for the router on the network, determines what the local subnet happens to be, and it is able to provide us with an IP address that is unique, that is global, that we can use on our network regardless of where we happen to be. And we're not going to get a duplicate because it does a duplicate address detection while you're in the process of configuring that system automatically. So you don't have to do anything. You just connect your system like you would do normally. You turn it on and you've got IPv6 addresses. You didn't even have to make a configuration change. You didn't have to set up a DHCP server. You don't need a DHCP pool. You don't have to worry about API-PA. You don't have to worry about if your router works properly. You have to do any of that. All you have to do is turn it on, and IPv6 works automatically. This is something that IPv6 is very, very powerful. IPv6 is almost too good. There's too many features and too many functions and too much capability, isn't there? Because people have tended to shy away from IPv6 because they don't want to get involved with the complexity associated with these hexadecimal values, and it's a big, long address, and then you've got Slack, and you don't have DHCP, and where do you find... I agree. You really do have a little bit of a learning curve when you get into the world of IPv6. Oh, but it's so worth it. IPv6 is so good in being able to work through those things. So make sure you are familiar with IPv6 and the things we need to know along with IPv6 as part of the Network Plus exam objectives, and you will have this answer, no problem. Slack is exactly what we were looking for. We had a number of people answer other answers on here. For example, CIDR. The CIDR notations that we use are specific to understanding how many bits might be in a subnet mask. This doesn't necessarily apply to what we're doing with IPv6. There is some CIDR notations that we can do with that. But whenever you see an IP address with a /24 at the end, That /24 is referring to that CIDR notation in that. So the CIDR notation itself is not anything associated with assigning IP addresses or automatically providing you with those IP address details. We also have 13% that said DNSSEC. This is the secure version of the domain name system. DNSSEC is used for being able to resolve a fully qualified domain name to an IP address or vice versa, plus another number of other features, and it's done over a secure channel, which is why we call it DNSSEC, but that has nothing to do with setting up an IP address on a device with DHCP servers. 13 or 11%, said VLSM, variable length subnet masking. That's a very common thing to see on the IPv4 side. Technically, we use this also on IPv6. It's a very broad term to describe how we're doing subnet masking for a particular device. But that subnet masking design, that style of subnet masking, is not related to automatic configurations of IP addresses. So that would not be the answer that we were looking for either. And lastly, CNAME, the canonical name, that's a type of DNS entry, a DNS record, not something we would use when we are configuring IP addresses. So only 7% of you chose that one. The answer we were looking for was the stateless address auto configuration, the SLAC. This is why we call it SLAC. 56% of you got it absolutely right. That's what we were looking for, and that was a correct answer by the 56% of you. Well done. Let's now go through the process of looking at another question here. We got some time left. This next question is more of a broader question. It's kind of an understanding of the technology. This one asks, which of the following would be most associated with the A in the CIA triad? Would this be north-south traffic flows, zero-touch provisioning, Wi-Fi protected access 3, active-active firewalls, or log aggregation? Wow, there's a lot going on there. So the question asks, which of the following would be most associated with the A in the CIA triad? Is it north-south traffic flows, zero-touch provisioning, Wi-Fi protected access 3, active firewalls, or log aggregation? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. A lot of people getting their answers in right now. Maybe you're already familiar with the CIA triad. At one point in the world of IT security, we tried to call this the IAC triad because we didn't want it to be confused with the U.S. federal government agency, the Central Intelligence Agency. But Central Intelligence Agency is very easy to remember. So I think a lot of people said, well, just call it CIA. We know it's not the CIA, but it's easy to remember if we call it the CIA. Plus, maybe it will confuse the G-men and they won't know where to find us. Maybe I'm throwing more in there that doesn't really need to go in there. Maybe I'm extending that out a little bit. But CIA is a very easy way to remember this particular abbreviation, which, as your hint, has nothing to do with the Central Intelligence Agency. I don't know that that's a hint. I think that's pretty obvious, but it's something to keep in mind when you're working through the details of this. The question is, which of the following would be most associated with the A in CIA triad? Is it the north-south traffic flows, zero-touch provisioning, Wi-Fi protected access 3, active firewalls, or log aggregation? Let's close our poll and see how you did. Oh, we've got a rainbow, everybody. It didn't take long today to get that rainbow. We did not get a majority, nowhere close to a majority, really. The best we have is a third of you that said the answer is active firewalls. We have 21% that are tied with north-south traffic flows and Wi-Fi protected access 3. 15% of you say log aggregation, and 10% say zero-touch provisioning. No single digits on this one. This is how torn we are. So let's back this truck up a little bit, because we need to understand what is the CIA triad and what is the A in the CIA triad. Well, I'm so glad you asked. The CIA triad is what we describe a series of 3 important principles in the world of information technology and information technology security. This is one, as I mentioned, sometimes refer to it as AIC, but it's really talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All of these things work together to make that happen. So make sure you are familiar with those three different elements of the CIA triad. It's very commonly shown to you as a triangle, since it is a triad. The confidentiality is one that's talking about keeping things private. That is a big part of what we do in IT security. So making sure that the data that we have is protected and other people are not accessing data that they should not have access to. That obviously is an important consideration when you get into IT security. We also have integrity, which means that the information that we are sending across the network is information that is what we're looking at is exactly what was sent to us originally. Nothing was changed as that traffic went through the network, at least not changed in an unauthorized way. And we often see this when we look at things like a digital signature. That's a chance for us to confirm that the message that we have received is identical to the original message that was sent. And we're able to do that even though the person that sent it is not sitting there with us. We can still confirm that we are looking at the original message. That describes the integrity part of the CIA triad. But our question was about the A part of the CIA triad was availability. This means that while we're keeping the network secure, while we're keeping our data safe, while we're making sure that information is not being changed or modified as it passes through the network, we're also keeping the network up and running. Having availability of these resources is just as important as keeping this information safe, which is why it is an entire separate leg of the CIA triad. Now that we know that the A is for availability, what of our possible answers tended to focus on being available? Well, if we looked at zero-touch provisioning, that's a very common way to configure a system so that when somebody initially turns it on, it automatically provisions, configures, and sets itself up so that we don't have to do anything. The zero-touch means that it's all automated. We don't have any humans working through that, which is great, but that doesn't have to do with availability. It has to do with maybe convenience. There might be some part of confidentiality in there because maybe certain security features are built into this, but has nothing to do with the A or very little to do with the A of availability. We have 21% or 15% said log aggregation. Log aggregation, extremely useful when you have a lot of different devices. You have routers and switches and servers and firewalls and other components, and you want to consolidate all of those logs into a single SIM, a security an event manager. It's something that's extremely common to find in most large networks, even in smaller networks as well, because it gives you a central place to go to do reporting and to consolidate and correlate between all of these different log files. But having a log aggregation server is great for reporting, but it does nothing for availability. So we would not really choose log aggregation to be associated with the A in the CIA triad. We do have 21%, a tie for 21% with north-south traffic flows and with Wi-Fi protected access 3. North-south traffic flows are referring to the way that data flows within a single data center. North-south means that it's traffic that is going from the inside of your data center to something that's probably outside of your data center and vice versa. So it's really describing a traffic flow. It doesn't have anything to do with availability, however, very little to do with availability. Along with Wi-Fi protected access 3, which I would clearly put into the C, the confidential side of the CIA triad. Wi-Fi protected access 3 is that encryption method that we use to keep wireless traffic secure. And so obviously that does fit into the world of cryptography and with the confidentiality of the data itself. That leaves us with the 33% of you, although not a majority, it was the plurality of you that said active firewalls. If you've ever installed a firewall, you know that the bulk of redundant firewalls are installed to be active passive, which means that one firewall will always be working. And if that firewall fails, everything automatically fails over to the backup system and it starts to take over and begin working. That means that a firewall is kind of sitting there idle the entire time. But it's very easy to implement. It's very easy to engineer. There's not a lot of gotchas when you do an active passive configuration. A more complex config is an active firewall where both firewalls are working simultaneously. There are a lot more moving parts, a lot more difficult to troubleshoot, but it does provide you with both firewalls working all the time, which provides you with a little more availability and throughput as the traffic is going through. And if you lose a firewall, of course, on active-active, the other firewall's already running. It continues to work as well. So anytime you see active-active firewalls, active-passive firewalls, redundant switches, redundant routers, multiple paths, all of those are referring to keeping things up and running or keeping the network available. So if you're looking for CIA, and that CIA triad, the A of availability works perfectly with an active-active firewall, and 33% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means that you probably already have your Network Plus certification and you'd like to renew that certification by watching a 1-hour webinar category CEU like this one and then adding on many others after the fact, I would be glad to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That's something that might really help you if you're trying to do renewals. If you're not renewing your certification, this probably doesn't apply to you, but I'll be glad to send you an email anyway. The way that you would earn that CEU is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You would click the Contact Us link, and in that Contact Us link, you would put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put November 2025 Network Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, active firewalls. Those are your super secret code words of the month, active firewalls. Again, the way that you would earn that CEU, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put November 2025 Network Plus or something close to that. I'll figure it out. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, active firewalls. And then if I will get these emails, I'll look through them probably over the weekend or the next 7 days. And then I will reply back to you with a digitally signed email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. So another way that maybe we can help you with the process of renewing. I also have a video in the YouTube description of this video that talks about ways that you can renew your certification in just a number of hours. So you might want to watch that video and learn a little bit more about the renewal process if that's something that applies to you. I'll also let you know that eventually you'll be able to look through all of these videos, but there's a lot of videos here. If you want to go through our entire course, it's 87 Network Plus videos. There's over 12 hours of content on there. I was looking at a post somebody made on Reddit the other day, and they said, well, it's a short course. It's only like a few hours. It's 12 hours, brother. You got a lot to look at if you're looking at this course, because it requires you to really go through a number, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics. There's no way you're going to be able to do that in just a few hours. But not everybody has time to go through 87 separate videos, and I recognize that. That's not something everybody can do. So you might want to have a look at our course notes. We've taken all of the text, all of the video information, all of our charts, graphics, and we put them into this one set of course notes. Full color. You've got this available in a PDF form that you're looking at on the screen here. This is my PDF reader that's right here in front of me. This has, as you can see, all of the text, all of the graphics, all the charts, all of those important things that can help you remember the information that you've already seen in these videos. Not only do we have this digital version, we also have physical versions. So if you would like a printed version of our course notes, they are beautiful. This is a perfect bound configuration with full color again on these, very high quality. I wouldn't do it any different. You can find this on my website. This is the physical edition. That's the printed book, and the PDF is the digital edition. You'll see them mentioned that way on my website. And also, if you get the physical version that we're going to ship to you, you get the digital version for free that you can download immediately. So while you're waiting on this to arrive in the mail, go ahead and log into your member account. You can download this directly from your account. Find out more about this by going to professormesser.com/NPCN. Let's do another question. Let's keep going through this list. This next question asks, let's see, here we go. A company's users are not able to seamlessly roam between two different access points. Which of the following troubleshooting tasks should be used to help troubleshoot this issue? Well, we've got a number to choose from. Let's have a look at our possible answers are change the wireless encryption to WPA3, run a bandwidth test, perform a trace route from each access point, restart both access points, or compare configuration files between access points. Got a lot to choose from there. A company's users are not able to seamlessly roam between two different access points. Which of the following troubleshooting tasks should be used to help troubleshoot this issue? Should we change the wireless encryption to WPA3, run a bandwidth test, perform a trace route from each access point, restart both access points, or compare configuration files between access points? If you think you know the answer, submit your answer at any time by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. And this Network Plus certification not only requires you to know a lot about the underlying network technologies, but it also requires you to be able to do some troubleshooting on those underlying network technologies. That's why the first part of the training course is very much a lecturing, showing you, demonstrating, giving you a feel of what these different products and features do on your network. And then the last domain is all about troubleshooting what is happening on your network. So hopefully this will give you a few things to think about as you are troubleshooting this very specific problem. There are a number of scenarios that are outlined in the official exam objectives, and you really should know for each of those scenarios, how would I work on troubleshooting this? Because that would be a perfect question to ask during the exam. I would argue it's a perfect question to ask during a live stream study group. So this is a good example of what you might find when you're trying to troubleshoot things on your network. Let's see how you answered this one. The question asks, a company's users are not able to seamlessly roam between two different access points. Which of the following tasks should be used to help troubleshoot this issue? Should we change the wireless encryption to WPA3, run a bandwidth test, perform a trace route from each access point, restart both access points, or compare configuration files between the access points? What did you choose? Let's find out. We've got 57%, just over half of you, say to compare configuration files between the access points, but a quarter of you, 25%, said you should perform a trace route from each of those access points. 9% said to restart them. I think that's always the right answer, but apparently only 9% thought that's the case. Turns out it's not the right answer in this case. 7% said run a bandwidth test, and only 3% said to change the wireless encryption to WPA3. That's because you already have changed the wireless encryption to WPA3, haven't you already? This is referred to as a roaming misconfiguration. This is a very common scenario. You might have different devices on your network, and you have devices communicating through a single access point. But as many of you know, when you are working through a problem in a building, you're usually going at one part of the building, you're walking through the building to the other side of the building. You might even be walking outside of the building to the building next door, and the entire time you are maintaining connectivity to the wireless network. But it's not all communicating to a single access point. It's not like you have a huge access point right there in the sky that is able to communicate across the entire network on the entire campus. Instead, you have multiple access points that you would work through, and the access point needs to be able to allow you to roam from one access point to another. And being able to do that requires that all of the access points are set up to be able to have the same configuration. Because to be able to seamlessly roam from one access point to the other, it needs to have the same name of the network. It needs to have the same configuration of your security settings so that it's able to seamlessly move you. Otherwise, you'd be on one access point, you walk a little bit down into the other side of the building, and suddenly you have to reconnect to the wireless network again. Nobody wants to do that. That is something that would disrupt the network. And that's why checking the configuration is the best step in this scenario, because your problem being able to roam from one to the other is related to the configuration across both of those access points. Maybe somebody got a configuration setting wrong. Maybe there's a configuration update that was made to one access point and not another access point. These types of things happen all the time. So 57% of you were spot on. Performing a trace route from each access point. First, the access points themselves don't even necessarily have to have an IP address. So this is not something that sometimes can even be done with an access point. Access points operate at layer 2. They do not operate at layer 3. Therefore, a trace route would be relatively pointless. And indeed, the route that a particular path would take across the network with IP is irrelevant to whether people are able to seamlessly roam from one access point to the other. We have 9% that said to restart both access points, and you would think that would be the answer. Isn't that the default answer for everything? In reality, of course, you should never reboot as the first thing you should do. You should start gathering information and understanding what's going on. And in the case of something not able to roam from one access point to the other, as long as both access points are working, why would you restart them? Your problem is not with the access point. Your problem is with the configuration on the access point. Restarting it's not going to help you at all. So this is not a scenario where restarting the device is even useful. Not only is it not recommended, it's not going to even fix the problem. So restarting both access points, not very useful to you. Running a bandwidth test, well, I think we should just do those automatically. If you're running bandwidth tests is kind of fun, being able to work through them and see just how much you can get that network running, how efficiently you can communicate out to those bandwidth servers. Very useful for testing your underlying infrastructure, useful for testing your internet connectivity, making sure that everything is working to the speeds that you would expect, but it doesn't help you when you need to be able to seamlessly roam from one to the other. So certainly something to think about. And then lastly, we've got a lot to choose from here. 3% of you said to change the wireless encryption to WPA3. This is one of those scenarios where working through encryptions with wireless access points, this is not where an encryption was either enabled or disabled. This has to be with the entire configuration of the switch and whether it matches on both sides. So this is a very good example of how a single problem has a certain number of things that could resolve the problem and has a certain number of things that will never resolve this type of problem. And that's what we really looked at here, is that we had one answer which could help to resolve the problem, and all of the others would not be able to do anything. And in this case, comparing the configuration files between access points was the right answer. That's what we were looking for, and that's the one that we were hoping for you to tell us. 57% of you answered that particular response. You got that one absolutely correct. Well done. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's see if we can fit in one more question, shall we? At least one that I've created. We'll, of course, be looking at your questions right after this, so stick around for that. Our next question asks, which of these connectors provides the highest fiber density in a single interface? Is it SC, BNC, MPO, LC, ST? I know. And I'm sorry, but there it is. These are the things we have to know. These are the things we have to remember and being able to work through. The question again asks, which of these connectors provides the highest fiber density in a single interface? Is it SC, BNC, MPO, LC, or ST? Wow, there's a lot of abbreviations. I don't want to call them abbreviations. I like to call them acronyms. Because they're technically not. It drives people crazy. So these acronyms that you have in front of us are just a few, but they are all associated with connectors, with single interfaces. So hopefully you are familiar with some of these abbreviations, acronyms, and or names. And hopefully this is something that you will be able to pick out which one of these is the best. Let's see how you do with this. This one is a pretty good one. Not only because I like doing acronyms, but I also like adding questions of things that are not on previous versions of the exam. Oh, there was a hint. There was something there. I guess you would have to have some familiarity with previous versions, though. That really doesn't help very many people, does it? Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of these connectors provides the highest fiber density in a single interface? Is it SC, BNC, MPO, LC, or ST? Oh, which one is it? I don't even know what it is. We're going to see what you answered. Rainbows again, everybody. Rainbows again. We got a couple to choose from for our rewind question last month, don't we? So we can see that we have a tie for first place. 27% say MPO, 27% say LC. Lima Charlie. We also have a tie for second place, which I guess technically would be a tie for third, but you know what I'm saying. B and C with 14% of the vote, and ST with 14% of the vote. I guess that's really third place if you want to consider that SC is 17% of what we have in that list. So we had a few to choose from here. We really don't even have one that is the plurality of the answers because we had a tie for first between MPO and LC, but it might have actually been something different because all of these are so close. What is the right answer? What types of things should we be looking for? Well, you were probably hoping to find something like MPO, the multi-fiber push-on, literally the name here. Multi-fiber push-on is what we were looking for. That is the connector. There it is. And if you're looking at this connector, it doesn't look like it's got a ton of fiber there. It doesn't look like it's any bigger than any other connector we worked with. I worked with ST connectors that are about this size. So why would this be one that is more dense, has more fiber in it than a different kind of connector? Well, to really see, you have to know that the end of this particular connector, if you look at it, it's like it has two holes in it. Those must be the two fibers, right? The transmit side and the receive side. This is exactly the same as an LC connector, as an SC connector. Those are pretty much the same, except those aren't fiber connections. Those are holes that allow you to position the connector precisely into the interface. If you were to look at the end of the connector, the holes there are just for guiding in the connection. The actual fiber are these little bright lights in the middle. Each one of these is a single fiber run. It's a single strand of fiber in each of those, and you can fit a lot of individual strands of fiber right there. Pretty amazing to have all of that right in the middle. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 fiber strands in the single connector instead of 1 or 2 fiber strands in a single connector. That's one of the big advantages of a multi-fiber push-on. In the name itself, MP, multi-fiber, is really talking about the multiple fiber strands that are inside of that connector. That is indeed what we were looking for. 27% of you answered MPO, and 27% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. We have other fiber and copper connection types here. The only other connector that is non-fiber is the BNC connector. The BNC connector is that kind, the bayonet connector that pushes on with that quarter turn that locks in place. Commonly see it with coax connections. BNC is not fiber, so it could never be the answer that we were looking for. Surprising that it got 14% of the vote. I thought nobody would be able to choose that one, but there's so many abbreviations here. It's easy to get confused over this. BNC being copper has nothing to do with fiber density. The other three options here, SC, LC, and ST, are all fiber connections. So really there were 4 fiber connections in this particular answer. We've got the SC, LC, and ST, but all of those are providing a single or a pair of fiber, depending on how you're bundling them together. And they're really only giving you a maximum of 2 fiber strands with a single interface. If you really broke it down, it probably is really 1 fiber strand per interface, but we're going to say 2 as a max because normally you see them provided in pairs with a transmit and a receive. MPO, as we've already seen, has 6 times that amount. 12 individual fiber strands. Therefore, MPO would be the highest fiber density in a single interface. And if you answered MPO, you got that one absolutely correct. As I mentioned earlier, everything that we've talked about today comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You need to get your hands on these objectives. They are incredibly valuable. They tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. I have a copy of the objectives right here. This one's a set of objectives that gives you an overview of the exam and then starts breaking down for you every single topic you need to know. Look at this huge checklist of things that you should break down. Lots that are here. In fact, if you go through this checklist, through this set of official exam objectives, and you're able to check off every single one of these, you can explain to yourself or someone else What is a router? What's a switch? What's a firewall? What's an IDS? What's an IPS? What's a load balancer? What's a proxy? What's a NAS? What's a SAN? What's an access point? What's an access point controller? So I think this is one that would be really, really useful for understanding more about the Network Plus exam. And if you are able to go through this and check off every single one of these, you're going to pass your exam no problem. Not even going to be a question. This is exactly what you need to know to pass this. A lot of people they'll come to me and they have a list of 100 port numbers they need to know. I say, well, why don't you just go through the list that's already listed in the exam objectives? This is all they would ever ask you. You don't need to know 100 of them. You need to know 20. So this might really change how you are learning and studying for this Network Plus exam. Incredible to have this here. It's free to download from the CompTIA website. Along those lines, it's hard to find on the CompTIA website. So let's go to CompTIA.org. And on the CompTIA.org website, I'm going to choose the option for certifications. Once I get rid of their ad there, certifications. And I'm going to go to the all certification, or I guess you could even click the network banner at the top and choose Network Plus. They have a lot of networking certs here. There it is, the CompTIA Network Plus certification, the Plus series. If we click on that, it takes us to a screen that shows us a summary of these objectives. We don't want the summary. We want the full listing of objectives. So if you're looking for the exam objectives for Network Plus, once you get to this page, scroll down. Scroll down some more. Scroll down a little bit more. Keep scrolling. Do you finally see a red box? Yes, you do. There it is. And it even says, get Network Plus exam objectives and practice questions. All you need to do is feed it your email address and it will pop up on the screen. Do I have to actually type it in? I guess I do. We'll type in our name. No, it's perfectly normal. That is in there. We can access that now. Let's see. Oh, I need to click the authorization. So here are the exam objective links, the English, German, Japanese, Portuguese, and Spanish links, depending on what type of language you would like to take the exam in. And all you have to do is click on that, and the objectives will download immediately. In fact, this is a somewhat newer version that was updated with the newer icons in it. Maybe I should grab that myself. So we'll bring that down and put it in our own system too and have that there for later. I'll just click that download link. Thank you very much. And now it's in my download folder. We'll have something that we can always look at and be able to reference. Those are the objectives. They're free and they tell you everything you need to know for the exam. I think you should focus on that. I think that'd be incredibly useful to you. Find out more. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. And I have links there. It will take you over to the CompTIA website. You just need to remember to scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Keep doing that, and I think you'll be great. We do one of these study groups of Network Plus every month, and I have all of my December dates already configured. I think most of these are in the calendar. I need to add them to our event list. You can see that on December 9th and 11th, we've configured our A-plus study groups. Our next Network Plus study group is on the 16th of November, and not our next Security Plus study group is on December 18th, but our December study group for Security Plus is on the 18th. We still have a Security Plus study group this month in November that we're doing on Tuesday of next week. So if you are here still in November on Tuesday of next week, come on back. We'll do Security Plus, which is always a fun one to do as well. These dates can sometimes change and sometimes without any type of warning. I always keep the calendar updated though. So you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and you will have the latest set of dates that I've locked into the calendar. And if I need to change them, I change them on the calendar first. So make sure that you are always referencing that to determine when the next live event might be. You might be watching this video a year from now. You can still go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out when our next live event is going to be. Well, we've made it through an hour of our study group, but we're not done yet. We're about to start our after show where instead of me asking you questions, why don't you ask me some questions? This is your chance to ask me. Well, I guess you can ask anything you'd like. I don't know that I would answer anything that you'd ask, but I'll answer most things. You're more than welcome to submit those at any time using that same link from above, professormesser.com/QA. It's a perfect place to input that question. Don't forget about our course notes, our success bundles, and much more on our website, resources that can help you at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We also have our professormesser.com/vouchers. So you certainly have that available to you as well. The discounted vouchers are not something you can find everywhere, and I'm happy to make these available to folks that are in the U.S. or Canada or U.S. territory by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, if you're on the internet, hey, we are too. You can go to professormesser.com/Discord/LinkedIn/Facebook/ whatever it happens to be. You'll find us there somewhere. You have plenty to work through and be able to find us on whatever social media site you happen to hang out on. We're hopefully there as well. And if we're not, let me know. I'll certainly set up a configuration over to that one as well. Well, that brings us to the end of yet another study group. Can you believe it? We made it through that first hour. Stick around for our after show where you can ask me whatever question you would like. That's coming up next. Stay exactly where you are. We'll be back to you in just a moment. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Let's keep going through our list of things. I think I can just get rid of that now. There we go. It's time for the after show, everybody. This is the part of the show where I click a few extra things on this side, and I'm able to look at questions that you submit, and I'm able to source those, go through them, find some interesting things to talk about, and we'll see what you have on your mind today rather than me simply giving you questions. Now it's your chance to give me some questions. If you want to submit an answer or question, sorry, not an answer, but a question at any time, you can do that with the link that's right there on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is exactly where you go. That's the same place you went before. But in this case, it's the tab at the top of the screen that allows you to move back and forth between those configurations. So I am going to hide the results I have on the screen. In fact, if you were to look at that screen right now, that's not it. It's right here. Let's see if I can put myself on the screen. I cannot, because I am unable to click the correct buttons today. This is a normal part of my life right there. There we go. Now we're clicking the right buttons. You can submit questions for this second hour of the study group at any time. I'm going to moderate these on this side, but trust me, your question is being recorded on this side. Do not worry. You're in the right place. You're able to ask the right questions, and you can do all of that from the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let me just flip my screens over on this side and have a look at the questions that you have. There are a few things that we can work through right now and be able to have some familiarity with. For those of you that have worked on learning what you need to know for this exam, you've probably gotten into a scenario where you've also wanted to work on how you would better prepare for the actual exam process. And one of the things that is a popular question, people ask this all the time, is one that Ty asked. And the question is, for PBQ questions, these are performance-based questions, is there a best way to go about studying for them? This is, I think, a very, a topic that is full of anxiety. This is a topic I get a lot of questions about when people are working through understanding more of what they could expect during the exam. Because if you've never taken one of these exams before, it's a mystery. We don't really know what we will be presented with when we walk into the exam room. So performance-based questions adds another layer onto that anxiety. Multiple choice questions, at least we know the format. With multiple choice questions, there's a question and there are multiple choices to select from. It's relatively straightforward. Choose A, B, C, or D, sometimes E, sometimes more than one. There's not much difference between these different questions. Oh, but performance-based questions, not quite as easy to understand what to expect, because performance-based questions, by definition, could be anything. There's no way to really prepare for a specific type of performance-based question, because a performance-based question is simply a question that is anything but multiple choice. That means it could be anything in the world that CompTIA comes up with. It could be a matching question. It could be fill in the blank. It could be a drag and drop. It could be a mixture of all of those together. They don't make it incredibly difficult to figure out, though. The whole goal with these performance-based questions is to get you to answer the topics with some knowledge that you have gathered from the exam objectives. They're not trying to create a question that's impossible to answer. They're not trying to create a question that's difficult to understand what's going on. There's not a lot of moving parts in a lot of these. It's really a very straightforward process. And this is the feedback I get from you. The feedback I commonly get on these performance-based questions is that I was really worried on the performance-based questions. I tried to find examples of performance-based questions. I tried to understand what a performance-based question was. It was difficult for me to figure it out. I went into the exam. I got my performance-based questions. Hey, they weren't so hard. They really weren't as bad as what I was expecting. That's really the common feedback that I get about performance-based questions. Hey, those weren't really as bad as I thought they were going to be. That's very common. I think we often have a fear of things that are unknown. I think that's natural. That's human. Everybody has that. I have that too, especially with technical topics. Have you ever been thrown into a technical project of which you know nothing? Like, oh, well, you're a Windows expert. Well, great. We have a project going on with Linux over there. I want you on that team. Go fix the Linux stuff. Like, I'm not a Linux, I'm a Windows person. Well, you're on Linux now. Well, there's the anxiety levels immediately go up. You're thinking, how am I ever going to do this Linux thing? And then when you start getting into it, you're looking at the command lines. Oh, this is pretty similar. Oh, that was easy. This isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And that's sort of the common theme with everything we do as humans, isn't it? Very common. And performance-based questions, similar thing. We've never seen one before. We don't know what to expect. It's not something we know is coming. We're afraid of it. Therefore, it must be really, 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 really difficult. And then people get in the exam and they realize, oh, I know this. I know the exam objectives. Therefore, I know the answer to this. And that was easy. It's just a drag and drop question. It's just a fill in the blank question. They put you to command line and I did the traceroute command because I know how traceroute works. That type of relief that people have when they come out of these exams is one of the first things they say. Like, oh, those performance-based questions, I was so worried. Turns out nothing to worry about. And that's the way you should approach this as well. The question that Ty asked, is there a best way to go about studying for them? And I think there is. And I think the best way is, well, it's the term that we've already talked about. It's that you know the exam objectives. That's the best way, is to go through the exam objectives and know every single one of these bullets. Now, the challenge with that, of course, is there's not 10 of these. There's hundreds and hundreds of these bullets. So it does take time. That's why it usually takes people 2 to 3 months to study for their Network Plus exam. Plus, you got all the acronyms on the back. Only 2 pages of acronyms. Thank you, CompTIA, at least for that part of it. Those exam objectives tell you everything you need to know about performance-based questions, because the performance-based questions, just like the multiple choice questions, come directly from the exam objectives. It's kind of a cheat though, isn't it? Because the question was, is there a best way to go about studying for performance-based questions? Turns out it's exactly the same way you study for multiple choice questions. Exactly the same. I mean, you're not sitting down and trying to parse together your own multiple choice questions. Well, you're also not trying to parse together your own performance-based questions. Instead, you're addressing this by knowing the content. And if you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. Let me say that again. If you know the content, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer. Whether it's an open-ended question, a multiple choice question, a fill-in-the-blank question, a pull-down menu, a drag, it doesn't matter. You will know how to answer these questions. My recommendation for those of you that are worrying about performance-based questions, don't worry about it. Study the objectives. Then you will have nothing to worry about. You won't have to worry about multiple choice questions or performance-based questions because you already know all of the topics that they could possibly ask of you. It's kind of a interesting answer. I think a number of people wouldn't take that as an answer, but that really is the answer. Study your exam objectives. It's the answer for pretty much everything associated with these exams. Not many certification providers give you the level of detail that CompTIA does in these exam objectives. You don't get this from Cisco. You don't get this from Microsoft. You don't get this from Amazon. You don't get this from Red Hat. This is one of these very unique situations where CompTIA is effectively giving you everything you need to pass this exam. No excuses now. You can really go through and really understand all of the things that you need to know just by going through those exam objectives. Let's go through some more questions that you have submitted at any time. Let's keep going through this list and the things that you have put into this list. We will thank you, by the way, for submitting those. And if you would like to submit a question at any time, you can do that. Follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. This is not really a question, and I know this because it's from Anonymous, who starts off with, not necessarily a question, but I'm going to try to take my test tomorrow. Oh, this is exciting. Okay. Anonymous continues. I feel like I know the objectives and how they work, but the acronyms always hang me up on practice tests. There's so many. There's a little dramatic going on there. Hope you don't mind. Just kind of threw that in. There's so many acronyms. One of the challenges that people have with these exams is the acronyms. I get it. In fact, if we look at our exam objectives, we scroll down to the back of this. It has, in fact, the CompTIA Network Plus N10-009 acronym list. And it gives out a set of acronyms like A is for address. GP is for Border Gateway Protocol. CAM is for Content Addressable Memory, and so on. There are quite a few here. There's this column, it's page 1, and then this column on page 2. In the big scheme of things, if you compare this to A+ or to Security Plus, there's not a lot of acronyms that are in their acronym list. And I think you've probably heard me say this before, is don't spend a lot of your time simply sitting in this list and memorizing the acronym and what CompTIA refers to as the spelled out words for the acronym. For example, MAC stands for Media Access Control. That is the spelled out version of that particular acronym. Well, one of the things that you'll notice as you go through the exam materials themselves, you go through my training course, you read a good book, you do some labs, these acronyms are sort of embedded into the training materials already. They are organically going to come directly out of your training materials. So I don't think that spending a lot of time on these 2 pages is the best use of your time, because the acronyms you need to know, you will have already learned by going through your training classes. They just happen automatically. In fact, if we look at your exam objectives, let's keep going. Let's go back to section 1 of your exam objectives, and we'll just look at section 1.2. Compare and contrast networking appliances, applications, and functions. You'll notice in here that we have intrusion detection system, IDS, and intrusion prevention system, IPS. We also have network attached storage, that's NAS. We have storage area network, that's SAN. We have access point, that's AP. We have content delivery network, CDN. We have virtual private network, VPN, quality of service, QoS, and time to live, TTL. So just in this single subsection, subdomain of the exam, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 acronyms that you've learned, just because they're in the exam objectives. And more importantly, you're learning more than just the name and the spelled out version. You're learning what they are, which is, by the way, the most important part. So if you're someone who really wants to go through this entire set of acronyms and individually go through, A is address, ACL is access control list, AH is authentication header, I think that might not be the best use of your time. Here's a good example of why. And in fact, I can tell you with one change, you can make this a much better use of your time. Let's take an example of this. Like AH stands for authentication header. Okay, what's that? That doesn't tell me anything. It's a header of something, and it has to do with authentication. Maybe? Sorta? Kinda? This is one of those acronyms that tells us nothing, relatively little in the acronym itself. How is an authentication header used? When would you expect to see an authentication header? Why do we need an authentication header? Those are 3 good questions. And if you are studying these acronyms and you're simply doing a flashcard, authentication header next, AP access point next, and you're going down the list that way, you're not learning anything useful. And in fact, on your exam, highly unlikely, remarkably unlikely that you are going to get a question that says, what did the letters AH stand for? It's not important. In fact, in the world of networking, we don't care what they stand for. In fact, we rarely use the names. You may want to say, hey, did you check the AH on that one? Did you capture any packets with an AH? Because we know what we're talking about. We know what the AH is for. It's just a shortcut that we can use. In fact, many of these acronyms, we forget what they are referring to. We forget that ESSID, we need to change the ESSID of that particular access point. Okay, what does that stand for again? I don't know, but just change the ESSID. Yep, okay. In fact, in the configuration, it probably even says ESSID. Probably isn't even spelled out. So this is a really good example of how acronyms are not very important on their own, but they're really important when you combine them with context. Context is the key here. So if you are spending time on acronyms for some reason, I don't even recommend you do that, but if you are spending time on these 2 pages, add the context into this link. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. That's why I say go through your exam objectives, go through your video series, go through your book, go through your labs. The abbreviations will naturally ooze out into your brain. That was a nice way to put it, wasn't it? They will automatically get embedded into the synapses of your mind so that they're just naturally going to appear, because you're going to be talking about wireless networks, and those wireless networks talk about access points. And those access points, and it talks all about ESSIDs and BSSIDs and all of those, you're already learning it. And you never touch those last 2 pages of the exam objectives. You just naturally, organically learned everything you needed to learn. They're right there in that list. And that's what I would recommend you do as well, is simply go through the exam objectives and the normal training and don't worry so much about the acronym. So Anonymous, you're taking your test tomorrow. Focus on the objectives. In fact, just ignore the acronyms for now. Focus on the core objectives. Make sure you understand what objectives you know. Go through that list, and if there's anything you don't recognize, now's the time. You got 24 hours before your exam. Circle those, make a note of them on your screen, highlight them, mark them up. Do something so that you can have a list of the 25 things that you don't know in this list and study those 25. And then go through everything else. So there are ways to optimize your study time. I think focusing on the core exam objectives is really the best way to learn an acronym without ever going into the acronym section. Let's keep going through our list of different questions that you have submitted. If you would like to focus on that, we could certainly have a look at those. There is a lot happening on this list. Thank you so much for doing that and working through it. This is quite a bit. There's a lot in here. Thank you so much for sending these in. I'm trying to find one that would apply to a lot of folks as we're going through the list of these. We talked about the exam objectives and being able to work with these. Alex asks, hey, what's the best way to learn the varying Linux/network appliance syntax? And we also talked about why you shouldn't learn tons of acronyms. You should simply learn the content, during at which time you will have already learned what all those acronyms are. So let's really only talk to the first part of this question, which is what's the best way to learn the varying Linux/network appliance syntax? What does that look like, by the way? Let's go back to our exam objectives and let's find anything that might be a Linux/troubleshooting thing to know. Network Plus really doesn't have Windows commands and Linux commands. It only has networking troubleshooting commands, and many of these commands are the same between the different topics. You will find most of these listed in Section 5 under network troubleshooting, specifically the network troubleshooting in Section 5.5, which is Given a scenario, use the appropriate tool or protocol to solve networking issues. And we have ping, traceroute, NSLOOKUP, TCP dump, dig, netstat, IP, or ifconfig, or ipconfig, ARP, nmap, LLDP, CDP, speed tester. And then there's other hardware tools. And we went through a number of basic networking device commands today as well. You don't really have to know much about the syntax of these. You're not going to get questions about what command line parameter is used in nmap to be able to identify a misconfigured anonymous FTP server. You're never going to get a question like that. Instead, CompTIA wants you to understand when these tools would be used. In what troubleshooting scenarios would these tools be helpful? So for example, if they gave you a scenario that said, you are using an ISP that is having a problem in the core of their network routing your traffic, how could you identify which router on the ISP's network is dropping packets? Which one of these commands would you use? Would you use show ARP? Would you use a speed tester? Would you use nmap? Would you use dig? Would you use ping? Would you use traceroute? And the answer in that scenario is you'd use traceroute, because traceroute is designed to give you a hop by hop, router by router view of how traffic traverses between point A and point B. And if there's a problem in between, say with your ISP's router, it will show you where in between you're having a problem. So that's a very good example of not even knowing how to run the command or what parameters you would put in at the command line, but instead you need to understand when you would use this command. That's a huge emphasis on this exam. Now, if you were to look at a number of training materials, including my own, where I show you how to run this command, you may be thinking, wait, I don't need to know how to run the command, but you ran the command. The reason we do that is so that you see the command working and you are able to link together the running of this command shows me this output. And you can work backwards now. If somebody says you need to come up with this output, ooh, how do I get that output? Oh, I need to run traceroute to get that output. So it's almost working in reverse to make that happen. But if you've never run the command to see the output, or even done it yourself, one of the things you'll notice in our video series is you can follow along with me because I'm doing trace routes to things that are public on the internet so that you can run the same commands and see the results on your own screen. There's something about doing that physically. For those of you that are musicians, you play the piano, you play guitar, you play drums. After a while, when you start working with those musical instruments, there's a muscle memory associated with it. You don't even have to think about it anymore. Your fingers or your hands just happen to do that function with that musical instrument. You don't even think about doing it anymore. It just happens that way. There's some connection between your brain and your fingers and your muscles that makes all of that occur, which is great if you're playing a musical instrument. Same thing applies for me on a keyboard, not a piano keyboard, a regular keyboard, like this keyboard. So boy, this keyboard's kind of beat up, isn't it? I'm literally missing letters. It's time. We may be needing to look for a new one on this one. So this keyboard is one that I don't think about when I'm typing in some of these commands. They just sort of happen. Oh, I need to do a trace route. There, it does the trace route on the screen. Because something about putting that command in and physically typing and watching the results of what I physically typed in somehow creates a link. I don't know what happens in our brain. I'm not a medical person. Do not ask me medical questions. You're asking the wrong person. I'm the computer person. I'm the tech guy. Do not give me anything relating to human biology. I am incapable of dealing with that. I'm much better with ones and zeros. That's one of the things that is useful to me is I can type on the keyboard and it somehow locks in what I typed with what I am seeing, which I think has a significant advantage when you're studying for an exam like this. So consider that if you have not used these commands yourself, you've not run a ping, you've not run a trace route, you've not run an NSLOOKUP, you've not run a TCP dump, you've not run a dig or a netstat or any of these others, do some of these. step through some of these and look at the output and understand what the output is telling you. And when you do that, I promise you, something is going to fire. You won't hear it. There's not going to be a noise. There's not going to be a sound. A bell is not going to go off. It should, because that's what it feels like. You're connecting together those pieces of it. So if you're someone who is stepping through troubleshooting, you're trying to get more familiar with the syntax or what would be used here, stick to the exam objectives. You don't have to go deeper than what the exam objectives tell you. If the exam objectives do not have a specific command line option, you don't need to know that command line option. That's how easy it is. Nmap has like 50 command line options. Do you want to memorize all 50 Nmap command line options? I do not either. I wrote a book on Nmap, and I don't even want to memorize all of those. So it's another example of how sticking to the objectives is the most important part of this, because you will run into a scenario where you need to know that high-level view of how that particular command or utility is used when troubleshooting on your network. Let's keep going through the list. How are we on time? We're good on time. Let's find some more questions. Of course, you can submit questions at any time using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can do that. I have a question about international finance. I do. Here it is. It's the question. And the question asks, hello, Mr. Messer. Thank you for the study group. I'm in Canada. When I tried to buy the voucher, it gave it to me in US dollars. Can I pay in Canadian dollars? This is a great question for many reasons. And the answer is you can't pay in Canadian dollars because I can't do anything with Canadian dollars because I am not in Canada. And therein lies one of the many problems with international finance is that different countries have different ways of paying for things. And different countries generally don't have a lot of connection between them to be able to handle these. So I can't take anything in Canadian dollars because then I can't use the Canadian dollars. They're relatively useless to me in the United States. I would have to exchange those at some type of bank into American US dollars, USD, and then I would be able to use them in the United States. Now, that's still possible. We could do that, but the exchange process is one that already is slightly volatile because those prices are changing all the time. That's not really the biggest deal. The biggest problem is that there is an exchange difference that whoever's exchanging this money for you takes a percentage of that money right off the top. So most of the time when an organization is located in a country, they're only going to be able to provide any type of transactions in that dollar. Now, we have been looking at ways to provide transactions in foreign amounts and have those dollars at least somewhat transferred over to us. But then you get into challenges with taxes from both Canada and the US side, and especially lately, for those of you that haven't really kept track of the financial rules and regulations, not only within a single country, but internationally, they are ridiculously complex. And banks are very sensitive these days to transactions that they cannot definitively define either within a country and especially between different countries. There is a significant problem they're trying to solve that is obviously surrounding being able to move money over borders. And it's an important problem to solve, but it's not an easy problem to solve. So one of the things that we have decided, at least initially, at least now in the short term, is that all of the transactions on our website are handled in US dollars. And if you are purchasing in US dollars, you should use some type of payment system that does the conversion for you. Ideally, you would use a credit card, debit card, or some other method of paying where the transaction fees are not either very minimal or they don't exist at all. There are a number of credit cards out there, for example, that will allow you to purchase and will not charge you extra for international fees, but not all of them are that way. So I recognize the need to ask the question, like, just take it in Canadian dollars and then just convert it. Well, if only it was that easy. There are significant challenges with that. So for the current time, everything is done in USD. And I mentioned that on the page. You will see on the page, it says, here's the cost in USD, just so you are familiar and you can see that on the website. The challenges with finances, just in a single currency, are many and varied. When you throw other country currencies into that, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. We used to take cryptocurrency on our site because that's one of the enormous advantages, quite honestly, of having digital currencies. You don't have any more borders. There are no more international conversations going back and forth and having to convert between one and the other. Instead, you can go from a fiat like US dollars, and you can easily convert between cryptocurrency and that. And it's relatively easy to make that happen. But in the meantime, that's just sort of where we are. We'll have to see where that goes. And I'm always keeping my eye open on what the financial markets and the legal terms are for using those financial markets are. And we just have to see where it goes from that. Let's keep going through your questions here. I don't know, that wasn't the best answer, was it? Like, that's just how it is. Not much I can do right now, and being able to work through those. Other questions we have, and there are many coming through. Thank you for sending these in. Quite a bit. Here's one. This is probably a common question that I get, and there's not really a common answer. So let's talk about this from Michael, who says, "Hey, Professor Messer, I have a master's degree in political science. I changed my career to dive into the world of IT earlier this year. Within 5 months, I earned the A+, Security+, CySa+, and now I'm having difficulty finding a job because most companies are looking for those who already have experience in the field. How should I go about this?" This is one of our number one challenges for people trying to get that first job in IT. And that's getting through the numerous barriers that are put up in front of you. It's more than just having experience with these technologies. You have to have a formal degree. Well, you have one of those. You have a master's degree in political science, although not a technical degree. It is a 4-year degree. In fact, that's a 6-year degree. So it's even more time. It proves that you are trainable, if nothing else. So you have this 6-year degree, a master's degree that you've invested your time and your money into. So that proves that you are able to stick with those series of things. Plus, there's a foundational knowledge that you have learned, because not every class you took was a political science class. There were also a number of liberal arts classes that you took. There was literature. You learned how to write properly. There are additional things in the field that you are familiar with there. And if you go to work for an organization that is in some way connected to the world of politics, then you also have a little bit of knowledge that you can bring to the table. So professional degree, that's one of the 4 elements we always will tell people is important, and you have one of them. The other element that's useful are industry certifications. The A+, the Network+, the Security+, along with any other industry certification, especially an industry certification that the employer is looking for. And that's an important consideration. A lot of people often ask me, "Hey, I just got my A+ cert. What should I do next?" I don't know. What do you want to do next? What are employers looking for, and what do you want to do? There should be a happy medium there somewhere, or even a love connection. There might be a direct connection between what you want to do and what an employer would like you to do for them. That's the best of both worlds, but you have to know what the employer is looking for. So my answer when somebody says, "I got my A+, what do I do next?" My answer is, I don't know. What do employers in your area want you to do next? That's really who you should be asking. I don't have any pull here. I'm not hiring you. But the people in your area, the employers in your area, they have a pretty good idea what they'd like to see. So you should ask them. You should go out to their website. You should look at job postings. And even job postings outside of your area might be useful as well. Just to give you an idea, if you're in Dallas, there are probably a set of industry certifications they like to see in the Dallas area. But if you were in Washington, D.C., I guarantee it will be a very different set of industry certifications and overall objectives that those particular employers would like to see. So check the employers in your area or wherever you want to work. because that will really help you quite a bit. That's your second of the 4 elements. The third of the 4 elements is really the one you were talking about, which is how do you get some practical experience? Notice that I didn't say professional experience, because that implies that you're getting paid. And we don't always have the luxury when we're starting out of having a paid job in technology. But employers want you to have skills that are similar to the people that are getting paid in technology. And I often say a lot of time that one of the things you should focus on is understanding how to do these things in your own home lab. Have you set up your own firewall and connected it and run reports and maybe integrated an IPS? That would be a great home lab. That would be some great practical experience. Have you installed some virtual machines running Windows Server and maybe Windows 11, and then have you connected it to an Active Directory configuration on that Windows Server? And then have you configured and set policies, group policies on Active Directory and applied them to that Windows virtual machine? That would be a fantastic lab to do, so that you could tell someone, a prospective employer, in an interview, oh yeah, I'm running my own domain at home. I've got it set up with multiple clients. We have a set of Active Directory policies that I've configured. I've got one set up as a kiosk. I've got another one set up as an administrator. I've got another one set up with a client config. I've pushed out applications automatically using that. I've set up limitations and security policies in Active Directory. These are the things that people are doing all the time on their own networks. When you set up a virtual machine of Windows Server on your home network, it's exactly the same Windows Server that they're using at that big data center down the street. There's no difference in either one of those. It's exactly the same code. And if you can perform similar functions on your home network that they are already doing on their corporate network, then you can talk a lot in that interview about how you set it up, problems you ran into, how you resolved those problems, and how you ultimately got it to where it is today. If you set up a firewall, that's even more. You could run some reports. You could even say, I set up this firewall, we plugged it into the network, and in the first hour, you will never believe how many attacks we identified coming in. Take a guess. Closest to the pin. How many do we get? 100, 250. We got 4,000, and here's the report. What a great story. Because when you show up for an interview, a lot of people walk into an interview thinking, I'm going to be ready for whatever question they pose of me. I haven't really studied any questions, but I'm just going to be ready and open for whatever questions. But that shouldn't be it. You need to be a person that sets the tone. You need to have stories that you tell in this interview. That's what the interviewer's looking for. You need to have, I just gave you 2 great stories. Whenever you're setting up a home lab, it never goes as planned. I'm telling you now, when you start working with a new application you've never used before, you're installing a new feature you've never installed before, you're installing a new operating system you've never touched before, something is not going to go well. And nobody in the interview says, tell us all about when you set up Linux and it didn't go well, but they will ask you questions about, why do you think this job is appropriate for you? Tell us of a time when you ran into a challenge that you had to get through to solve this particular problem. Oh, I got lots of those. Let me pull up my list. I got lots of stories to tell. How much time you got? And you start telling your stories. And if they have some type of hook like that one, I plugged in this firewall, guess how many attacks I found in the first hour on a connection that was never live and suddenly was live. How many do you think? It's kind of fun, kind of make a game of it, because those are the types of things that company's dealing with every minute of every day. So having your home lab is a great practical experience for you. If you can also volunteer places, if you have an organization that you frequent and that organization needs help making sure their antivirus is set properly. Maybe you have a church, or you have a religious organization you work with, or maybe a nonprofit you work with. Those people would love to have you come in and make sure that their antivirus systems are working, that their operating systems are working as expected, that any problems they run into, you can find the best solution for what they're doing. You may not be getting paid for it, but trust me, it is valuable experience that gives you stories. And you can, of course, talk to that experience when you're in a room interviewing with someone. I told you there were 4 elements. Those were 3 of them: formal education, industry certification, practical experience. The 4th one is the one that everyone talks about, but hardly anyone puts in a list, which is someone who works there. What? How to get a job in IT with no experience is you take advantage of the no experience part. That's what you should do. So I tell people a lot that knowing someone in the industry can be helpful. And I don't mean being their chum. You're not hanging out on the weekends with them. You're not even connected to them on social media, but you went to a Cisco user group meeting in your area. You went to a Microsoft user group meeting. You went to a regional IT trade show in your area. You went to a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting. You met these people, because that's where all of the people at these big companies that are in your area, that's what they're going to. And I'm speaking as someone who used to run the local Palo Alto Networks user group meetings in my particular territory. Whenever we would have these meetings, they were always at a nice restaurant, and we would have food, and we would have a presentation of some kind that was an interesting technical thing. And of course, everybody in the local area would show up. These are the people you need to meet to be able to say, oh, I know the person who works in your security department, Bob Boberson. Bob, I met Bob Boberson at the Cisco user group meeting, and he told me all about the thing that you're doing in Walla Walla, Washington, and how you're working through some imaging or bandwidth issues or security problems. This is exactly what you need to connect with the employer that's there. People want to hire people they know, and hopefully people they can trust. Well, if you already are familiar and an acquaintance of someone who already works there, especially if that person is the one that gave your resume to the HR department, that puts you in a very good position. Now, wait, why would someone give your resume to the HR department? Oh, well, here's a little tidbit for you if you've not seen this before. Almost every medium to large company out there has an employee referral program. And one of the things that you'll find when you go to these user group meetings is you meet someone for the first time, they might, before you even have a chance to mention that you're looking for a job, they might mention, oh, are you looking for a job? You should send me your resume. You're thinking, why are they asking? They don't even know me. Why are they asking for my resume? What is that about? Well, that's because within their organization, they have an employee program that says, if you bring someone's resume to the HR department and we end up hiring that person, we will give you, the employee, $500, $1,000, whatever it happens to be. And they stay here 3 months, you will get a bonus of some kind. So there's a financial incentive for people within the company to bring other people along that they know. This is good for the company, it's good for the employee, and it's good for the person getting hired. The company doesn't have to pay for a separate recruiter or pay for an additional service to find people out there. The employee already knows somebody, and usually when you know somebody, at least at a professional level, there is familiarity and acquaintance with them. You can effectively, there's a little bit of trust you have of that person because they're not an unknown entity. You at least have worked with them out in the world at these user group meetings. You're familiar with them, you know their name, etc. And when you start working through challenges for the person who's getting hired, well, now you didn't have to go through a lot of hoops. You were able to be hired by this company just because you happen to know somebody who was there. So that's a win-win-win, a win for the company, a win for the employee who's already there, and a win for the person who's getting hired. That is a good position to be in. So make sure that you take advantage of these local events that are already going on in your area. They're already having Microsoft user group meetings. You're not there. They're already having Palo Alto Networks user group meetings. You're not there. Why are you not at the Cisco user group meetings? First, they're feeding you. This is good. Usually it's pretty good food. These companies are making some money. So they can do better than pizza. So they've got hot food. It's good. It's more than just melted cheese. They're giving you actual proteins. And the other part is that they really do focus on allowing people to network with each other. That's part of the reason for doing this. Yes, they are teaching you something. They are showing you some of their wares. Maybe they're showing you things that are just coming out. So you're seeing some new products. That's interesting, of course. But being able to network together with the people that are already in your local area, that can be incredibly valuable when it comes time to looking for a job. And by the way, these are the people that are going to be on your LinkedIn list for the rest of your career. Anytime you meet somebody professionally, you should always be asking, oh, it's so great to meet you. Can I add you to my LinkedIn? I'll send you an invite. And most of the time people are, yeah, absolutely. Sure you can. Of course, you can do that. And so you end up getting into their LinkedIn list, and you might even be hired by that company. And now you have somebody who is a professional acquaintance that you, through the rest of your career, will always have a way to keep track of where they are, what they're doing. And more likely than not, you will run into them again later on at some point in your career. That just seems to be how it goes. This is not an incredibly large community of people. And the more you work at a particular niche within this community, within this technology, the more you will tend to run into the same people over and over and over again. When I worked as a systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks, I met people at the beginning when I started with Palo Alto Networks that I ran into at the end when they were working for a completely different company. So on day one, I would meet a bunch of people. 7 years later, I would meet them again, and they were just working at a different company again. You run into these people all the time. So it's always nice to be nice to them, to introduce yourself, to ask about what they do, to ask if what they think you should be working on to get a job doing this type of thing, and to ask if they have any open positions and would they mind giving your resume to HR if they haven't even asked for it already, because they know they'd be getting an employee referral bonus. That was a long answer regarding how to get a job in IT with no experience. I do summarize all of this, if it can be called a summary, in a video that is connected to the YouTube video of this live stream. It's in the YouTube video description, how to get a job in IT with no experience, where I talk about those 4 elements and I go into a lot more detail about all 4 of them. That might be a good way to step through them. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's see if we can fit in another answer, because it's a Friday, right? I think we very rarely do a live stream on a Friday, so it's kind of nice to have one of those ready to go again. There was a question also earlier of how to find the objectives. We did go through that on the network, but let's do it one more time for those of you that didn't find it before. Go to CompTIA.org. You'll find this guy. Who is that? I don't even know who that is. It's somebody, he looks like he's real. So this is what we do these days. We try to figure out if the image is actually real. There's this CompTIA website has across the top a link for certifications. And on this certification, you can choose all certifications, AI certifications, cloud certifications, cyber certifications, data, digital skills, network, and tech support. We'll choose all, just so you can see all of the certifications that CompTIA has. Some of them are coming out. Some of them they already have. There's a lot here. The ones that are the CompTIA Plus certifications, the Plus series, are the red ones on the screen. So things like Network Plus right here. I'll click Network Plus. It takes us to the Network Plus page. And they give you an objective summary. And I think a lot of people see this page and go, oh, there's the objectives. No. These are not the objectives. These are a summary of the objectives. You need to scroll some more. Keep scrolling. Look for the red box. There it is. There's the red box. Get Network Plus exam objectives and practice questions. That's where you need to go to get the objectives. You put your email address in and it gives you the download link right there. That's how you get to the objectives. I know we did that before, but there was that separate question that came in and I wanted to be sure that we covered that. It's an important part of this. I need to put a graphic up. I have a page, professormesser.com/objectives, and I tell you, scroll down to the red box. A picture of the red box would be useful. I'll add that today. Lori, if you're still listening, remind me to put the image of the red box in there on that objective page so I can do that. So now she's emailing me right now to let me know that, because I've already forgotten. Quite literally, as we're sitting here, I will forget. So it's always nice to have somebody double checking me to have that there. Let's keep going through this list. See if I can get more of these. There's a challenge. We talked earlier about the 4 different elements of getting a job in IT, and those are incredibly useful and working through them. But I would like to talk about the exam process itself. One of the things I often mention, it's in my my Exam Hacks ebook, is I tell people, when you go to take an exam, where are you taking the exam? Have you been to the site where people take the exam? This can be kind of important. I'll explain why. This is from Tim. Tim asks, I'm scheduled to take my Network Plus exam tomorrow, Saturday morning. All right, people, here we go. It's go time. I would think, Tim, that you've already been through the exam objectives. You've already gone through these topics. You've looked at the different things you need to know. You've tested yourself. You've done all of those proper things. But Tim says 2 things I know for sure. 1, definitely go and check your testing center ahead of time. I followed your advice. It's made me feel much more comfortable about tomorrow. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment and how that can really come back to be a savior for your entire exam. The second thing Tim says is, the study group sessions are invaluable. Oh, good. I'm glad you think so, since we are sort of doing one right now. If Professor Messer was the one that writes the Network Plus exam, I know I'd pass. That also makes me feel more prepared for the real exam. Well, I don't write questions for the actual exam, but all of the questions that I write in a similar tone and style as the actual exam, because I've spent a lot of time studying the tone and the style of these exams for that very reason. I don't want to present you a bunch of questions that might technically be correct, but have nothing to do with the style of the actual exam. It's almost like you get to the exam and suddenly it's a shock to the system because the questions are written in a very different way than what you were expecting. But not if you look at my materials. We specifically spend time to understand the style so that when we present you with questions, they're in a tone that is something that will be very familiar when you sit down to take the exam. But let's talk about the first section of Tim's message, where he talks about checking out the testing center ahead of time. Why would you want to do such a thing? Why would that be very important to you? One of the things that CompTIA requires, well, in the case of CompTIA doesn't actually give you the exam. What? Yes, this is something you should be familiar with, is CompTIA is the company that provides the content of the exam, but the actual exam process, you walking into a testing center or you going online to take the exam, is not CompTIA. That is someone that CompTIA is contracted to give you that exam, and worldwide, that is Pearson VUE. It's a third-party company that CompTIA is contracted with. They partnered with them to provide that exam. A lot of companies do this. Cisco does this through Pearson. I think AWS, Amazon, I think does through Pearson. There are only a couple of these companies out there that provide this service, so you'll run into Pearson VUE quite a bit doing this. So the testing centers themselves are managed by Pearson VUE, and there are a set of standard requirements and standard setups for these testing centers that must be done by every testing center so that they are all uniform. Except they are not all uniform. They work very hard to get them close to being uniform, but occasionally you will run across a testing center that looks like it's from 10 to 20 years ago. You have a mouse and it has a ball on the bottom. The monitor is a CRT. Occasionally you'll just run into it's like you've gone down some type of waterfall and now there's dinosaurs everywhere. Like, where am I? What is going on here? Now, fortunately, those are few and far between. And most of the testing centers that you run into have modern equipment with LCD monitors and keyboards that work and plenty of room to work. And they've got everything you need to have the best testing environment whatsoever. So it's very, very interesting when you run into a place that is not. But how do you know if your testing center is really set up for you to succeed for this exam? The only way for you to know is if you stop by before you register your exam. So this is something I do recommend, is first knowing where the testing center is very helpful. It gets rid of that, I don't know where I'm going. There's anxiety with me finding this place. Do I turn at the first exit? Do I get off the interstate? Do I follow the local streets? Is it hard to park there? Where can I park? These are all concerns. These are things that increase your blood pressure and your anxiety when you're ready to take the exam. So if you do a drive-by a week before you're planning to take the exam, oh yeah, now I know where that is. I didn't even know that place was there. There it is right there. I drive by this place all the time. Looks like they have plenty of parking in the front. Let's go stick our head in the window. Let's go stick our head in the door. So walk in, and you might even ask the person out front, would it be possible to see your testing center? I'm planning to take a test in a week. Could I just look in the window? Can I stick my head in the door just to see what it's like? Just so it'd be a place that I would be comfortable taking an exam. Most places will do that for you, or they'll give you at least an image of what the exam center looks like. And you can tell a lot from that. That gets rid of a lot of anxiety for figuring out if you will be comfortable in this testing environment. I've told this story before, and it's worth saying again. This is one of the reasons why I say this, is that I took a certification exam in Miami when I used to live there, and I took it by the airport. This is one of those things where it just brings up a big list on the screen, and the one closest to me is there. So let's go to that one. Well, I was working near the airport at the time, and the place that I was going to was right next to the airport on 25th Street or 36th Street. I think it was on 36th Street, for those of you familiar with the Miami airport. And I go there. It was in a kind of a two-story strip mall sort of looking place. I went up the stairs to the second story, and it was designed for aviation exams, but there really was no quality assurance. And by that, I mean the exams themselves were on a tiny little desk that was pushed into a closet, not a walk-in closet, just a regular closet that you open the door, but they took the door off so that they could fit the desk in, and you sat outside the closet and your desk was inside the closet. I am not making this up. And you took your test sort of out where everybody was. They were sort of looking at you as you worked with your mouse that barely worked and a keyboard that was just, how did it get that much dirt on it? But I did pass the exam, but I realized I never want to take an exam at this center ever again. And from that point on, every time I would plan to take an exam, I would go visit the site beforehand until I found the best possible place to take the exam in my area. And I just ended up going there the whole time. So that is one of those scenarios where you will probably want to do a little bit of legwork to confirm that. Now, a lot of people take their exams at home now as well. You don't have to go to a testing center. You simply stay at your house in your pajamas with your fuzzy slippers, and you connect to the network and you take your exam there. There are some additional requirements when you do that because they need to set your house up to be as secure as an actual testing center. You have to have a camera. They have to be able to hear you. They have to be able to see the environment that you're in. There's a lot more things to step through, but all of those requirements are outlined on the CompTIA and Pearson VUE website. Make sure you read through them if you do that. I don't like doing exams at home. That's a personal preference because there's too much that can go wrong. There's too many times people might walk in. There's too many network connections that could go bad. And if you've ever seen my studio, this is not a place that would be, they would let me run an exam from. There's too much stuff here. In fact, you can only have one screen even powered on when you're taking the exam. So my studio would not work for an exam center. So going to an exam center is much more preferable for me. But maybe not for you. You might be an hour away from an exam center or more. So taking your exam at home is perfect. It's much preferable than going and spending time driving somewhere for an hour, hoping to pass your exam, and then you're stuck having to drive back, hopefully happy that you passed the exam. And then if you have to do it again, you would have to go make that trip another time. It seems like a lot of wasted time when you can simply do that at home. You just have to keep in mind what the rules are when you are at home. There are some very specific rules, and there are things that could happen during your exam that could cause your exam to be halted, and you could potentially fail because someone walks into the room and right behind you, which has happened. Or you drop something on the floor and you lean down out of the camera, you just failed your exam. literally right then. They just said, nope, it's over. Click. Whatever you just did, if you answered all the questions you needed to pass, then you passed. But if you didn't answer all the questions you needed, you just failed. And you lost your exam, and you would have to pay again to take that. So that's another one of those scenarios where you do have to be very particular about what people are making available at their testing center, and you have to think about maybe taking the exam at home. But that's why Tim says in his note how important it was that he checked in at the testing center prior to booking this exam, because now he knows where the testing center is. He knows how easy it is to park at the testing center. He's looked in the testing center room, and it's perfect for taking the exam. It's clean, it's quiet, it's set up as a proper testing center. It's not in a closet, and that's one that works best for him. So best of luck, Tim. Tomorrow, Saturday, everybody send your good vibes over to Tim. He's going to be taking that exam, and please keep us informed. Let us know how it goes. Let us know what the results are. No pressure. Let us all, everybody here wants to know, Tim. So maybe check those exam objectives again one more time, a couple more times today before you're ready to take that exam. Just a little bit of extra study wouldn't hurt anyone. Be a great way to do it. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another study group. Can you believe we did a study group on a Friday? When has that ever happened? Thank you for being here on a Friday. I thought it would just be me and maybe two other folks. So thank you so much for surprising me and making it something that we could all enjoy as we were here on the live stream. We do one of these study groups every month for Network Plus. And of course, we have our entire archive of these study groups available on our YouTube channel. Also, replays index is available on the Professor Messer website as well. If you'd like to know when our next live event is going to be, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar, where you will find that our last live study group of the month is the Security Plus study group, and that's on Tuesday. We're here on Friday now. Once the weekend is over and we make it through Monday, come on back Tuesday and we'll do one of these for Network Plus. I haven't even written the questions yet, so who knows what's going to show up on that exam. I want to thank you so much for joining us on a Friday, joining us on the study group in general. We always love doing these study groups, and we could not do it without you. We appreciate your support on these study groups, and we appreciate your support in general. As we're getting close here to the Thanksgiving holiday, my thanks is to you for allowing me to do this and for all of us to be together to learn just a little bit more about the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certifications. Thanks so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.